When your spouse leaves you, they're not running from you, they're running from God. I've seen this again and again and again, where a spouse leaves and says, "You were controlling, you were a narcissist, you are this, you are that." Well, most of the time they're having an affair anyway, even if it's emotional, and even if you firmly believe that, not my spouse. That's a conversation for a different time, because every time I talk to people on the phone and I'm like, okay, that's another sign, that's another sign, that's another sign, but whatever. But too many times we feel as if they're running from the marriage. And while that is an outer sign of what they're doing, people who run from God's will, they run from the things of God, are running from God. Watch me. Most of the time, when a spouse leaves, they may still go to church for a time, but little by little, they stop going as often, or they stop reading their Bible, or they stop doing their daily prayers, or they switch churches to a church that, is a little bit more accepting of what they think, or doesn't know that they left you. And it's like, I want to go to a place where no one knows me. And they can create their own narrative. It is not you. You do need to become a better man or woman. And God is going to use this season of your life to help you to do that. But the reason I tell you this is not to exonerate yourself, but rather to say, I need to save my spouse. Because they're having, whether they'll admit it or not, or you know it or not, or it's obvious or not, a crisis of faith. I've seen this happen with preachers, Protestant preachers, of course, because Catholic priests don't marry, where they've said, I want, I am a man of God, and I'm going to do God's will. And it's okay. God says it's okay if I leave you because you weren't the spouse that you should have been, or whatever the excuses that they come up with. So I don't want you to get tricked into thinking, oh, well, my spouse still goes to church, so she's not right. No. Because I think of this one particular preacher. He too stopped preaching at his church when he left his wife. And he found another church and he preached at that one. And his sermons changed a bit from saying the wrongs of the gospel and the Bible and infidelity, and kind of made them softer, and found reasons why in some cases it might be acceptable. Put marriage aside. All of us, when we run away from God's rules and God's laws and God's love, are running away from God and not the other person. We're not running from our moms or our dads. We're running from that person that represents God. And we're running towards that thing that we want. Like a child who wants to run towards, I want to go play at that playground over there. No, you can't. I want to play at that playground. Then when mom and dad aren't looking, they run to that playground. But they did what their parents didn't want. They weren't necessarily running from their parents. They weren't mad at the parents. They were running towards that thing that they wanted. When our prodigals run from us, marriage is a sacrament. And then it's a vow and a covenant between two persons and one God. And when a person runs from that and says, well, God says it's okay. No, God doesn't say it's okay. They are learning who God is. They really don't have as deep of faith, or they're having a crisis of faith. But don't worry, God will never let them go. God will always have a grip on them. And whether or not they choose God is going to be up to them. But your prayers, your fasting, your almsgiving, all of those things work to bring your spouse back to God first, and then to you. And if you had to pick between, do you want God to bring your spouse back to you or back to God? If you're struggling with that, so many people go, I know I should say God, it's God, but they still are hoping that spouse comes back to them. That just shows where we are. We have to get to that place in the journey where we say, God, as long as he comes back to you, as long as she comes back to you, I'll accept that. Doesn't mean you have to like it. But it shows that God is saying, I'm using you to help win this person's soul. And if they looked at you and said, Christine, if I told you this person would never come back, but you pray for them till the day you die and then they would come back, would you do it? It would please me to have this person in heaven. So that's part of our jobs. We are supposed to pray our prodigals back to God. They're not running from us. They're running from him. And he loves them desperately. Hope this helps you go after some souls and have some peace in your own breakup. You will get a reconciliation in many cases. As a matter of fact, in my standards group, we just had two reconciliations last month of couples that one said, I will never get back with you. And they did. Maybe yours is the next one. Prayers, fasting helps. Turn it back to God first. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching this informational Bacon Bit. And before I say, remember to live your life sunny side up, which I just said, don't forget, you can contact me if you need help in your relationship. I do relationship coaching, even if it's just one of you. I do spiritual direction. And I want to help each of you learn to live a life worthy of your calling and reconcile any relationship in your life. Find me at Christine@breakfastwithbacon.com. Now I'll say it again. And don't forget to live your life sunny side up.